This is assignment 6. It's on page 19 and it's household budget. And either you have to type in all this information yourself, or I will have told you how to get that particular file. Underneath the diagram on page 19, it says about freezing panes. Now, to be honest with you, this is such a small spreadsheet that freeze panes doesn't really have any meaning or any use here, but we'll do it anyway. Position the cell pointer in B4. So in other words, when we freeze the panes, the main heading and the months will stay on the screen at all times, and the left column with the row headings will stay on the screen at all times. So to do freeze panes, you go to View, Freeze Panes, and drop down the little menu and choose Freeze Panes. And you'll notice a line appears, and I can scroll down and yet keep January, February, March, April, and May on my screen. And I can scroll to the right and yet keep the first column of information on my screen. So freeze panes affects the screen. It has no implications for printing. At the very bottom of page 19, question 1 says, using the % style button and the increase decimals button, format all interest rates to percentage 1 decimal place. So we actually have some interest rates here, and they are actually given in decimal form. So first of all, to get percentage, we go back to our Home tab, and there's a percentage button, and we press that. But the problem is it's going to default to giving all of these as whole number percentages. So they're all going to look as if they're saying 3, even though some of them are 3, some would be 3.1, and some would be 2.9. But we can fix that. So let's press the percentage button first. And then if we use the increase decimal button, we can give ourselves 1 place of decimal. So at the moment it looks as if they're all saying 3%, but when we give it 1 place of decimal, we can see that one is 3%, one is 3.1, the next one is 3, the next one is 2.9, and the last one is 2.9. If we turn to page 20, question 2 says, calculate monthly deposit interest. And he tells us that that's the opening balance multiplied by the interest rate. So we're going to do all the calculations for January first, and then we'll end up copying them for the other months. So that's the main heading for this section, income, and that's deposit interest. So this is where we want our answer to appear. So in B8, we type equal, which tells the computer it has to do the work. The opening balance for January is in B4, so we're going to type B4, and we want to multiply that by the interest rate for January, which is in B5. And we press enter on our keyboard to have that accepted. If we go down then to total income, we need to, as question 3 says on page 20, calculate total income and later on total expenses. So total income is found by adding the deposit interest, the children's allowance, the wages, and the night classes for January. So that's B8 plus B9 plus B10 plus B11. And when you have your formula done, press enter to have that accepted. Don't worry that things don't look like money. That's all to do with formatting, and we'll fix that at the end. It also said in question 3, calculate total expenses. So similarly, total expenses for January is in B19. So we're going to click on B19, equal, and it's the mortgage, the petrol, the food, and the car insurance for January, which is B15 plus B16 plus B17 plus B18, and press enter to have that accepted. Question 4 says calculate the closing balance. So the closing balance at the end of January is whatever you started off with in January plus your income minus your expenses. So that's going to be equal the opening balance for January, which is in B4, plus the total income for January, which is in B12, minus the total expenses for January, which is in B19. And when we press equal, that comes up for us. Now, question 5 says the opening balance for February is the closing balance for January, and the formula for February's opening balance is equal B21. So whatever you finished off January with is what you're going to start February with. So what you want the cell in C4 to do is pick up the information from cell B21. So we use a linking formula equal B21. And that will just read whatever it says in B21. Then it says, copy all formulas using fill right. However, it's going to look wrong for a while because it's waiting for information that hasn't been finalized. So the deposit interest and opening balances for March, April, and May will be 0 until you copy the closing balance formula across. So we have an opening balance for February formula. And if we use the little fill handle, we can fill right for March, April, and May. At the moment, they're saying 0 because this is not finished. We're going to do the same thing for deposit interest formula. And we're going to do the same thing for the total income formula and the total expenses formula. So again, nothing is finalized at this moment. So we're seeing zeros here and we're seeing zeros here. But if I then select the cell that contains the closing balance for January, and I use the little fill handle to copy to the right, you will notice suddenly that everything gets filled in. So number 7 then says, using the print preview button, preview how your spreadsheet will look when printed. Well, in the current versions of spreadsheets, we don't have a print preview button. What we do is we go to File and Print, and we can see it here. The next thing is we need to go back and actually format. So 8, format all money amounts to currency, and the book says using the accounting button. So this book is rather confused as to which is currency and which is accounting. If you're doing level 4 spreadsheets, it has to be currency. If you're doing level 5 spreadsheets, it actually doesn't matter. And you find that up here. So if we highlight that and we go up here, I'm going to use currency this time, currency. And then all of these figures here, they're all currency. Okay. Number 9 says center the heading in row 1 across columns A to F. I would actually knock off the freeze panes for this because it gets confusing. So I need to go to View, Freeze Panes, and just unfreeze the panes for a moment. And from A1 to F1 to be highlighted, and on the Home tab, Merge and Center. Question 10 says format headings to bold as shown. When it says as shown, you need to look at the diagram. So household budget is bold. The months are bold. The words opening balance is in bold. This heading income is in bold. Total income, expenses, total expenses, and closing balance. So you have made your screen look like the way it is done in the textbook. Then number 11, center the data in columns B to F. So highlight B, C, D, E, and F. That's left align, that's center, that's right align, we want center. Then the whole point of spreadsheets is that you can change one figure, and any figure that depends on it will change of its own accord. So change the interest rate for May to 3%. So it used to say 2.9. You can just hit delete and type in 3. Because the cell has been formatted to expect a percentage, it puts in the percent sign itself. When we press enter, we now see that the deposit interest for May is now 194. Total income for May is now 961.74, and the closing balance for May is now €16.85. Question 13 says print the spreadsheet. So we go File, Print. Ensure that you're printing it to the correct printer. And do make sure that it's saying A4. And we can just go print. And hopefully it'll go to my printer. And finally, it says save the spreadsheet as household budget. So it's important to remember when you're saving that you're saving it to the correct place. So to do that, go File, Save As. Make sure you're putting it into the correct folder. So in my case, I'm going to save it to a memory stick. And Chapter 1 data within that memory stick. And I just want to call it household budget, so I'll get rid of all of that. And I hit the Save button. And that's the question finished. And if we want to get out of that, we go File and Close, which leaves our screen ready and Excel still open so that we can do another question. If we were finishing completely, we would just hit the little X button up here. So that's that video finished.